Grief in children. Factors influencing how children grieve. By Bridget Moscato, Neisha D'Souza, Nilufer, Tayla Serra, Tayla Ryan, and Fiona Rajapaksha. Children can experience grief and loss from a very young age. Like adults, children have their own way of grieving. Children dealing with grief may act out feelings, experience changes in sleep and eating patterns, display younger behaviours, or display anger or frustration. It can be difficult to talk to a child about death, but honesty is important. The way in which children experience and express grief after a significant loss in their lives is influenced by many things: the nature of the loss, their previous relationship with the lost person or object, personality, previous life experience with death, their physical and emotional health, their developmental stage, the social environment, behaviour modelled by adults in their environment, media, culture, and most importantly, the availability of support. The impact of loss affects children in very similar ways to those of adults, but their expressions of grief are often different and therefore easily missed or misunderstood.
A major factor influencing children's grief, not mentioned in the prescribed text, The Last Dance, is the media. As recent literature mentioned by Webb 2010 suggests, for media and direct exposures, it appears that anything that decreases the emotional impact of the experience or decreases effective coping may contribute to reactions. A child's closeness to the event, previous traumas, current traumatic exposures, reactions during viewing, and or relationship to the experiencing the trauma may make a difference in reactions to media images. The media tends to play up violence under ordinary circumstances, and the violent death of a well-known or admired person may stimulate children's fear or conform distorted perceptions they may have about the dangers around them.
It is now common knowledge that children are exposed to many more hours of television and the internet through the use of accessible electronic devices on a day-to-day basis. A common coping strategy for children when death occurs is that they use fantasy to ignore loss. Children's movies, like the many Disney films that we grow up with, can portray death as dramatic and magical or even peaceful, and almost gives a chance for the other characters to say goodbye. This can create confusion for children to understand real death, as these circumstances are not always the case. Fairy tales, metaphors, and the like should be avoided or used with care because children may take such explanations of death literally. Despite this being known as a negative aspect, the media can also be important to provide people with news and information as well as to educate. The use of children's programs can in fact facilitate healthy grieving in children, and to demonstrate this, Elmo from the Sesame Street was cast as a grief counsellor for young Australian children. In the clip, Elmo talks about the death of his Uncle Jack with other Sesame Street characters, including his father. They portray different grieving models through conversation, which include explaining what happened, letting emotions out, and sharing memories and moving forward.
Yeah, my brother. Oh, he sure did love baseball. Yeah. And he loved teaching you how to play. He was so proud of you that day, he gave you the cap right off his head.
Wait, I can't wait to see Uncle Jack and show it to him today.
Son, can I,
Oh, yeah, Daddy?
he won't be there. Do you remember how we talked about your Uncle Jack? He died.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm gonna just show it to Uncle Jack next time.
I'm afraid not, son.
But I'm gonna keep calling him on the phone, right?
No, son. You see, when someone dies, it means they're not alive anymore. Their body has stopped working. They don't eat or breathe or talk on the phone. Uncle Jack died.
Clips are distributed as a kit with other information and real-life stories. It was launched in Australia with the knowledge that there is a lack of counselling services for parents of young and primary-age children. Quite often, it is children that are left out of the grieving process, as children's grief is very misunderstood, with most thinking that children's grief won't last for very long. A study conducted by grief counsellor Tayla asked 20 children who had lost a parent for feedback. The children, ranged 7 to 14, believed that the Elmo DVD could help families talk about death. That is the most important thing to take away from using media. It is to find methods to get families talking to their children about death and grieving at a level they will understand.
The way children report.
Another major factor outlined in recent literature by Brito, Engel and Super 2013 suggests cultural capacities influence young's grieving. This relates to the child's participation in rituals such as funerals and the family's cultural beliefs regarding death and the afterlife. These cultural capacities interact with the young person's developmental stage to influence reactions to loss, grief and other occurrences during the young person's life. Rituals are essential to children's healing. They serve to bring into reality that which is unbelievable and to provide a way for the mourner to embrace closure by saying verbally or symbolically what needs to be said. When children are denied participation in rituals, they are denied a very important step in the process of saying goodbye. Human and Kramer 2006 has suggested that children in particular experiencing loss who have a strong ethnic identity and well integrated into the community with extensive positive social networks will generally display greater psychological and physical well-being.
The way children are brought up is different within every culture, as culture affects children's attitudes towards grief as well as their behaviour and beliefs on how to express grief. Culture influences how children interpret what grief is and how to grieve, which will usually continue through to their adulthood. Certain traditions and grieving ceremonies are held to express grief. For an example, Aboriginal culture focuses on kinship and spirituality. They use spirituality to provide a sense of security for children. One thing to note is that the way cultures express grief may be different. However, the way people feel grief are somewhat similar. A child's cultural background in most cases will help them grieve in a way that is most helpful to them, but in some cases may not. However, it definitely can act as a great support system for a child when going through a loss.
As mentioned in the chapter in the textbook The Last Dance, although children tend to be resilient in coping with tragedies in their lives, adults can play a crucial role in guiding a child through grief by listening to the child's concerns and communicating support for the child's well-being. Family support is particularly vital for the child experiencing grief. It is important for the family members to openly discuss the circumstances surrounding the death and give the child opportunities to explore the troubling aspects of his or her grief. As if no support is available for the child, leaving them on their own to cope, they are left with confused feelings of guilt and blame. The loss may have traumatic effects that continue into adulthood. It is also stated in the textbook The Last Dance, children are known to have a greater coping ability in a crisis when they feel included as participants in the unfolding experience. When children feel as though they are excluded or their questions go unanswered, uncertainty creates more anxiety and confusion. So when an adult is also struggling to cope with a traumatic experience, it may be difficult to provide an explanation of the painful experiences to a child. The child's feelings and concerns may be dismissed or ignored, suggesting how vital support is during the time a child is experiencing grief.
There are many different types of support that are able to assist the grieving process of children. Children grieve differently than adults. Most children do not feel sustained, intense emotions that adults feel when grieving. They may show their sadness only occasionally and for brief periods, or they may complain of physical discomfort such as stomach aches instead of expressing sadness. As an adult, you can support children through the grieving process by demonstrating that it's okay to be sad and by helping them make sense of the loss. It is extremely beneficial to answer any questions the child may have as truthfully as possible. Use very simple, honest, and concrete terms when explaining the death to a child. Children, especially young children, may blame themselves for what happened, and the truth helps them see that they are not at fault. Open communication will smooth the way for a child to express distressing feelings. Because children often express themselves through stories, games, and artwork, it is good to encourage this self-expression.
Open communication will smooth the way for a child to express distressed feelings because children often express themselves through stories, games, and artwork. It is good to encourage this self-expression and look for cues in those activities about how they are coping. There are many points that should be taken into consideration when helping a grieving child, such as allowing the child, however young, to attend the funeral if he or she wants to, conveying spiritual values about life and death or pray with your child, meeting regularly as a family to find out how everyone is coping, helping the child find ways to symbolize and memorize the deceased person, keeping the child's daily routine as normal as possible, and paying attention to the way a child plays, as this can be one of the child's primary ways of communicating. There is also many things that should not be done, as it can alter the outcomes of the child's well-being at such a delicate time in the child's life. For example, not forcing the child to publicly mourn if he or she doesn't want to, not giving false or confusing messages like grandma is sleeping now, not telling a child to stop crying because others might get upset, not trying to shield a child from the loss. Children pick up much more than adults realize. Including them in the grieving process will help them adapt and heal. Not stifling your tears by crying in front of your child and send the message that it's going to be okay for him or her to express feelings.
Whilst family, peers and teachers play an important role in children's lives, there are many support services available for those who feel unequipped to care to a grieving child. Bereaved support services provide counselling, support and education to bereaved families and individuals. The opportunity to talk things over with a trained counsellor can offer encouragement, support and advice through the grieving process. Rather than dictating how to grieve, professional support services present ideas and strategies to help the child and family cope. The following is a list of some support services available for grieving children. Australian Child and Adolescent Trauma, Loss and Grief Network aims to promote an understanding of child and adolescent trauma, loss and grief by assisting families in dealing with the grieving child by better understanding the process. The Australian Centre for Grief and Bereavement is funded by the Victorian Government to provide statewide specialist bereavement service for individuals and families who need help following the death of someone close. This service operates throughout Victoria and provides a range of support services for both children and adults. Kids Grieve 2 is a support group program designed for children aged from 6 to 14 years who have experienced the death of someone significant in their lives. The Bereavement Care Centre provides comprehensive counselling and support services for families of the terminally ill and recently bereaved. Kids Helpline offers a confidential 24-hour counselling service for children and young adults aged 5 to 25. The service can be accessed from anywhere in Australia free of charge. The National Centre for Childhood Grief was established as a charitable organisation in 1994 to address the needs of bereaved children and young people between 3 to 18 years. The centre is now called a friend's place to minimise the likelihood of embarrassment and stigmatisation. The primary centre based in Sydney provides individual and group counselling, support for caregivers, advice for teachers, and training and clinical supervision for professionals and volunteers.
I think we found some good strategies, right? Yeah, Daddy. Let's figure it out. I knew that. Now, you hold on to that kiss, okay? Yeah. And maybe this time we don't say goodbye. We'll just say bye-bye for now. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye for now, son.